I want to share something I wrote today with you. Recently, I was rereading Dr. J. Stuart Ablon's book, Changeable. In it, he makes a strong case, backed up by decades of research, for the reality that when people fail to navigate relationships and conflict successfully, it is a lack of skills, not will. As someone who was raised in a household with two parents who struggled with their own dysregulation, having left home young and married young, and as a result, lacked the skills to navigate life well, and because of this, they struggled to teach me anything of value when it came to my own dysregulation, especially as a young neurodivergent person struggling to understand myself and the world around me. I can tell you I longed throughout all of my childhood to have the skills to navigate relationships and conflict well, and I think so did they. I hated that I did not have the support I needed from the adults around me at the time. I quickly turned to finding my own sources of learning, other more trusted adults, especially grandparent-like figures and surrogate parent figures. I turned to poetry, books, movies, and other forms of media, hoping I could capture some sense of what skills I needed, but the how to build them and knowing not to expect perfection along the way was still a glimmer in the future of my understanding. It would get messy there for quite a few years in my mid to late 20s, as my frontal lobe began to fully form and I began to see and understand the world more clearly and in broader terms. There was more opportunity for conflict, both externally and then internally, which meant more practice and more opportunity for skills building, leaning into the messiness and giving myself and others grace as we learned together, because became the key to understanding this is our life's work. This is what it is to be alive, to consistently navigate relationships and learn how to do so with ever stronger and a more nuanced set of skills. Because everything about being alive is predicated on relationships. Whether we are talking about the relationship between hydrogen and oxygen molecules as they come together to create water, or the balance of nutrients provided both to us as humans and to the soil by growing the three sisters together, corn, beans, and squash, or us with one another, or furthermore, us with water, soil, and the nutrients provided by adding a seed to healthy soil that is well watered and watching it grow. Then finally, being able to partake of its fruits, strengthening and reinforcing our relationship with all that it took to create those nutrients and with our body, having fed it well together. Because it did not happen with our efforts alone. It was thousands of relationships that do not end with our consumption, but instead just another connection point in the billions of relationships that make our lives possible every day. It took me decades to learn on my own because I had no idea what I was even looking for. I had no idea what skills I needed to learn and no language to seek it out. I had to use the little I knew at the time to try to find my way to what I needed. As I learned these skills, I was, all the time, assuming most people had been taught some form of these skills explicitly. And I think for some people that is true, but for far too many of us, we were expected to pick these things up naturally in a world that insists on being unnatural. We don't even realize that we, as humans, are in fact nature and meant to live in collaboration with it. Instead, we seem to spend all of our time separating ourselves from it, then taking small moments to reconnect with it as a type of luxurious momentary respite from the separation, instead of realizing we never should have removed ourselves from it quite the way we have. I see so many places working to revise this and rewild neighborhoods and communities, planting native trees, grasses, and flowers in order to inject life back into our lives, and it gives me so much hope. What I learned as I moved through the years is although most didn't grow up in quite as extreme of an environment as I did, many people had and have gaps in their understanding of how to build relationships as well. I was not alone in my quest, and in many ways, we were all navigating the mess of relationships together, trying to find our way to something healthy and fulfilling for everyone involved. It took me more than a decade to put together the relational framework that is the foundation of my work, that all healthy and ethical relationships require curiosity, respect, and accountability. The thing that the thing that building and implementing those relational skills in our life does is is make inclusivity possible. Without the foundational relationship skills, inclusivity is not possible. Not only that, but diversity will be seen as a threat rather than a necessary and natural part of the human species, mostly because we will not have the skills nor the understanding to navigate that which is unfamiliar. We will lean away from the fear and discomfort, stunting our ability to connect, rather than into it, building confidence and courage along the way. For example, we could continue to assume the young person who doesn't seem to respond to us when we are looking right at them and speaking to them until we have asked them at least a second time is willfully ignoring us or wasting our time, being insubordinate or disrespectful, instead of getting curious and realizing that it takes them a minute to process verbal communication, especially when their train of thought has been interrupted. They need a moment to orient themselves and ground themselves, and could take 30, 45, or even 60 seconds for that to happen, which can feel like an eternity when we are not used to extending time and space to one another or even to ourselves. They could also feel overwhelmed, and their verbal processing could be interrupted by that stress, or they might feel uncomfortable being put on the spot and stressed that others can overhear the interaction and might judge their response, etc. We have no idea because we haven't asked, and often haven't even built our skills around asking in a way that doesn't exacerbate the struggles that person might be facing or the skills they need help building, and maybe us too. We could continue to be frustrated by these and many other moments of friction, or we could employ empathy by diving into our curiosity and respect and hold ourselves accountable to learn more about those who are a part of our team, those we lead or partner with. There is nearly infinite possibilities for our individual and collective success when we employ this powerful relationship framework, and it will take time to build the skills to do so. We can change, but we won't, and we won't be able to see others' growth either if we refuse to build our investments in curiosity, respect, and accountability. And for those of you who are not yet familiar with my work, respect is not obedience, and accountability is not punishment. They are much more beautiful, nuanced concepts that require our investment in curiosity rather than control. Control isn't real anyway. So let's give up trying and put our energy into curiosity instead. This transforms our relationships, cultures, and people's lives in fundamentally positive ways that translate to more successful, profitable teams, projects, and organizations. And if you don't believe me, believe Forbes or Citibank, who have done studies showing exactly what the lack of investment in diversity, and I put forward the relationship skills required, is costing us.